You confuse loyalty with utility. Understand this distinction. What you perceived as a bond, an emotional covenant, she viewed as a current state of optimal resource allocation. When her biological imperative signals a superior position, a more efficient pathway for genetic optimization, the previous arrangement becomes a liability. This is not malice. It is an evolutionary algorithm executing its primary function. Female biology prioritizes two immutable objectives: resource acquisition and genetic fitness. Your role, your value, is perpetually assessed against these metrics. Loyalty, as a male construct designed for stable pair bonding and paternal investment, often finds itself in direct biological competition with this fundamental drive. It is a collision of disparate operating systems. Hypergamy is not a social construct, a modern invention, or a choice. It is a constant, a fundamental algorithm deeply embedded in the female reproductive strategy. It dictates the constant upward mobility in mate selection, a relentless pursuit of the best available genetic and resource provider. Modern society, with its removal of traditional social and economic constraints, has simply unmasked this imperative. The historical barriers, economic dependence, social stigma, limited mobility, once enforced an apparent loyalty. They created a scenario where optimizing her position often meant remaining with the current provider. Those constraints are largely gone. Her biological script remains unchanged. What you now witness is the raw, unadulterated execution of that script, unimpeded. You operate under the assumption of absolute loyalty, a concept deeply ingrained in your biological imperative for pair bonding, for resource consolidation, for the secure rearing of offspring. You see it as a fixed pillar, a non-negotiable term of engagement. This is the male ideal, a construct essential for building stable structures in societies. But her operating system functions on a different algorithm. Her reproductive strategy is fundamentally opportunistic. What you call loyalty, she registers as a conditional contract. Its terms are in constant flux, dictated by your ongoing performance in the biological marketplace. She is not designed to be static. She is an agent of genetic optimization, programmed for an ongoing calculation of potential gains and losses. This is the calculus of hypergamy. Her internal mechanism continuously assesses for the highest value male, not out of malice, but out of an evolutionary drive to secure superior genetic material. What you recognize as alpha traits, combined with robust resource provision and protection, the stable beta traits. It is a dual mandate. She seeks the optimal blend for genetic propagation and offspring survival. Understand this. Her attachment, her fidelity, is directly correlated with your perceived value in this equation. Has your sexual market value declined? Has your resource stream been compromised? Has your capacity for asserting control diminished? Each variable feeds into her internal assessment. This is not a personal failing on her part. It is the cold, impartial logic of evolutionary biology. She is designed to pivot, to reevaluate the contract if a higher value proposition emerges, or if your current value drops below a critical threshold. You perceive this as betrayal. She perceives it as a strategic realignment, necessary for the optimization of her reproductive success. It is a biological imperative, not a moral deficiency. The game is rigged, but only for those who don't know the rules. Consider the historical ledger. For millennia, the construct you termed loyalty was less an intrinsic trait and more a transactional outcome, enforced by the stark realities of survival. The social and economic framework acted as a heavy anchor, creating dependencies that made exit a high-cost, often catastrophic proposition. This imposed a form of apparent loyalty, born of necessity, not inherent design. The modern environment has systematically dismantled the architecture that once enforced this stability. Her economic independence means survival is no longer contingent on your provision. The state, through social safety nets, provides a fallback, insulating against the consequences of separation. You are no longer the sole or even primary resource vector for her basic needs. Add to this the pervasive digital marketplace of potential partners. A single device now grants instant, low-friction access to an almost limitless array of alternatives, each representing a potential upgrade. The cost of exit has plummeted. The social stigma has eroded. The practical barriers have dissolved. What does this translate to? It means the innate hypergamous drive, that biological imperative to constantly seek a higher value partner, now operates with minimal friction. It is unchained. When the historical constraints are stripped away, when the dependencies are severed, the biological imperative is free to express itself without impediment. She is unburdened by the traditional encumbrances that once made staying a logical, if not always desired choice. This is not a moral failing. It is a biological reality meeting a new operating environment. Her system is designed to recalibrate, to scan for superior genetic and resource potential. When the cost of doing so approaches zero, the behavior becomes inevitable. Your expectation of unwavering loyalty, rooted in a historical context that no longer exists, is now a critical liability. It is a legacy expectation in a system redesigned for constant upgrade. You are operating on an outdated script. The expectation of unconditional loyalty is not merely naive, it is a fundamental vulnerability. You calibrate your internal compass to a fantasy, blinding yourself to the underlying biological competition that governs all human interaction. You invest your emotional capital, your focus, your very essence into a system inherently driven by resource allocation, mistakenly believing your feelings possess the power to override the cold, immutable calculus of her reproductive strategy. This is not a moral failing on her part, it is the default program. This persistent delusion creates a significant resource drain. Your time, your cognitive load, your financial bandwidth, all are diverted from your own strategic advancement, redirected towards maintaining a construct that exists primarily in your perception. You surrender your emotional sovereignty, allowing your internal state to become a derivative of external validation, of her fluctuating compliance with your internalized script of loyalty. When the biological reality inevitably asserts itself, when the environmental variables shift and her imperative for optimal resource acquisition reconfigures her strategic alliances, you find yourself at a profound strategic disadvantage. You were asleep at the wheel. You ceased monitoring your own value. You assumed a static equilibrium in a dynamic evolutionary landscape. Your sexual market value, your financial trajectory, your physical command. These critical metrics were left unmanaged, unoptimized. The contract you believed was absolute was merely conditional, subject to the continuous assessment of utility. Your vulnerability was not a lack of effort, but a profound miscalculation of the operating system itself. Understanding the biological calculus we just outlined is not an emotional indictment. It is a strategic advantage. You cannot demand loyalty. Loyalty is a consequence, not a gift. You command it through the relentless elevation of your resource value. Your sexual market value is a quantifiable asset. It depreciates without constant, deliberate maintenance. It vanishes with neglect. Your focus must cease being external. Stop seeking validation from a partner whose biological imperative is to seek the optimal resource. Your objective is emotional sovereignty. This means engineering your own state. Optimize your physical chassis, sleep, nutrition, strength. Reconstruct your financial architecture, eliminate resource drain, build capital, secure your future. Fortify your psychological defenses against the emotional manipulation inherent in the biological script. Become a self-sustaining system, a superior resource, independent of any single variable, any single relationship. This is not about winning back a specific individual. This is about becoming indispensable to your own survival, your own lineage. This is about control. Stop reacting. Start engineering.